Thank you for joining us tonight. We hope you and your family are all doing well. My name is Sharon Sands, and I'm the chair of Altadena Heritage. I am also a UCLA Luskin Urban and Regional Planning graduate student and a participant in UCLA's Leaders in Sustainability Certificate Program. Tonight, we will listen to our expert panel and then have a moderated Q&A session. After the panel, Greg Apodaca will conclude the meeting. Now, I am thrilled to introduce Val Zavala. Val Zavala spent 30 years as a broadcast journalist at KCET Public Television in Los Angeles, winning numerous journalism awards, including 19 LA area Emmy Awards. She retired in 2018, and during her time at LA's preeminent PBS station, she served as a reporter, anchor, producer, and VP of News and Public Affairs. For much of that time, she was also anchor of Life and Times and executive producer, anchor of SoCal Connected. She covered a broad spectrum of Southern California issues, including politics, education, healthcare, environment, demographics, the economy, arts, and culture. She currently serves on the board of the combined KCET and PBS SoCal Broadcasting Company, and she is also a fellow Altadena Heritage Board member. She lives in Altadena with her artist husband, Mark, and dog, Casey. And now I'll hand it over to Val Zavala.
Thank you, Sharon. It's so fun, a lot of fun to be here, and it's great to be on the board. This is my first year, and I'm getting right into things. So the first thing I want to do, actually, because we asked for those who could to watch the half-hour KCT SoCal Connected program on plastics and the whole recycling crisis. I know a lot of you did not get to watch that 25-minute documentary, so guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to sum it up for you in 3 minutes. Then I will introduce our panelists, and we will begin our conversation, and then we will also be looking for questions coming from you through the chat box. Okay, so SoCal Connected did a half-hour documentary called Life in Plastics, looking at our recycling crisis, and it is a mess right now. It started out pretty easy because at first, a lot of the recyclable materials were very simple. They were just made of 1 or 2 ingredients and things were easily recycled. Since then, everything's gotten complicated and the system is a mess because of economics and everything else. So cities are facing a recycling crisis. There's simply too much trash. For the last decades and decades, it's been piling up. Plastic is about 20% of our carbon footprint. So it's not just sitting in trash bales, it's also polluting the entire environment. Recyclable is not the same as recycled. You can have something that's recyclable, but under very unusual, difficult situations, things that are not actually going to happen in the real world. And also, each city is different, and that complicates the matter. So we are in a recycling crisis. Also, as you know, China decided it doesn't want to buy a lot of our plastic, so that put a huge amount back on the market, but there's really no buyers for it. The codes are confusing. Have you looked at the bottom of those little triangles? I have something here, I think. You look at the bottom, and there's a tiny little triangle, and in that triangle, there's a number. Well, all those different numbers refer to the codes of what the components of that plastic are. The truth is, only numbers 1 and 2 are really recyclable. The rest, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, are too complicated to separate the ingredients, and it's really not worth recycling. So if you want a recycling tip, look for 1 and 2s, put those in the recycling bin. Aluminum's still worth a lot. Metal still worth a lot. Overall, though, it's a mess. Plastic industry is very powerful. It spent $7 million to defeat a California recycling law last fall. We're going to learn more about that from Dan Coffey. The redemption prices are going down, so it's not even worth it for a lot of people to go around and collect metal and plastic because there's really the price is so low, it's not worth their trouble. The worst of all the plastic is that styrofoam, polystyrene, you know, the really lightweight, white, foamy stuff that you get a lot of your food in. It's terrible. It's called the bottom feeder of all plastics. It does not degrade, hardly ever. It needs light to degrade, but that's very unlikely. It's extremely difficult to recycle, and that's a mess, and there are no buyers for that at all. A company called DART Industries is the largest styrofoam manufacturer in the world. It has launched a disinformation campaign, a website that promotes foam as recyclable. It's not. 70% of recycling centers do not accept that styrofoam, and it cannot be sold, but DART claims it can. So there's a lot of money floating around when it comes to recycling and a lot of misinformation. DART spent $2 million in particular to lobby the California legislature to fend off the restrictive legislation, and they succeeded. The bill that would have put restrictions on them was defeated. Plastic companies hide behind these associations that they fund to lobby against anything that hurts the recycling industry. And not just in Sacramento, but they send out all their people to cities. Whenever a city is considering an ordinance that might hurt them, they make sure to go to that city and try to defeat it. However, despite those efforts, Pasadena joined other SoCal cities in banning these foam containers. And due to the hard work of Mr. Maury Wolfson and others, it succeeded in Pasadena, along with Long Beach, Malibu, and Berkeley. However, Los Angeles has yet to have an ordinance that reduces or bans this bad styrofoam stuff. To make it worse, LA still tells the citizens it's okay to put it in a recycling bin, even though it never ever gets recycled. So that's it. One final thing that I thought was really interesting in the program, right at the end, it talks about the Keep America Beautiful campaign. Do you remember this? It was launched in 1953 when we were all kids. It had that crying Indian that looked really sad because we were littering everywhere. Well, that was not a public service campaign. You thought that came from the government? No, that was a campaign that was designed and paid for by big corporations who wanted to shift the responsibility for all the trash, put it on the public instead of taking responsibility themselves. Today, the Keep America Beautiful campaign still exists. Who's on their board? Pepsi, Dow Chemical, American Chemistry Council, and DART, among others. They would rather blame the consumer and make government and taxpayers pay for the trash that they create while they reap the profits. So it's very, very frustrating. And I'm really glad that we are now focusing in on this. And cities are really in a great position to go forward, even when the state doesn't necessarily move forward. So that's a quick synopsis of the half-hour doc. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our panelists. Our first panelist is Daniel Coffey. He is a second-year master's student at UCLA Luskin School of Public Affairs. His area of concentration is in environmental policy and sustainability. He's been active in reducing plastic since he was in high school, and he has a bachelor's in environmental systems from the University of San Diego. He served both in Teach for America and the Peace Corps, where he educated youth in Guyana about rainforest biodiversity and conservation. He's the lead author of the report, Plastic Waste in LA County, which we're going to hear a lot more about tonight. It was produced by UCLA Luskin Center for Innovation at the request of the LA County Sustainability Office. They wanted solid information to move forward on reducing plastics countywide. So we'll learn more about what the report has to say in today's discussion. Also with us is Madeline Giorigi. She is chair of the Natural Resources and Environmental Commission for South Pasadena. She oversees the most comprehensive green action plan, which includes working towards a plastics-free city. She is the founder of Transition South Pasadena, a group that builds community through sustainability projects, which recently received an award for their work on the Repair Cafe. That's an event where people bring their broken items and volunteers fix them for free. It's a great idea. She's also the community leader for Greenpeace San Gabriel Valley, focusing on their Break Free from Plastic campaign. Thank you for being here, Madeline. And also with us is Amber Chen. Amber is a sophomore at South Pasadena High School. She's also a youth commissioner for South Pasadena's Natural Resources and Environmental Commission. This year, she started a club on campus to get students involved in local climate efforts. She's interested, after she graduates, in music and journalism. But right now, she is an environmental activist, and we're very happy to have all three of you here. All right, so let's start the discussion. Dan, I'm going to begin with you. Can you give us the highlights? What were some of the most important findings that the Luskin School report did for the County of Los Angeles?
Of course, and good evening to everyone. So when we set out to do this report, we focused on a few different elements of plastic waste in LA County. Firstly, we examined impacts, and specifically, we examined 4 different spheres: the way that plastic impacts the environment, energy, the economy and communities, and human health. We found impacts are present in the county and globally across all 4 categories, with the most acute being the impacts on marine and aquatic ecosystems. This is kind of the quintessential example of how plastics get into the environment. Often they're ingested by wildlife, particularly marine and aquatic wildlife, and it's a very predominant problem that you see a lot of in the media. We also then examined what is actually being done with the plastic waste that is generated in LA County. And we found that there are, as you might not be surprised having watched the video, some pretty significant problems when it comes to the recycling of plastics. As Val just said, only Code 1 and Code 2 plastics are commonly recycled right now in this region. Those are your beverage bottles, more or less. Those are the key product of Code 1 plastic that are recycled. And then items like milk bottles and detergent bottles. Some facilities recycle Code 5, which is called polypropylene, but for that to be economical, they have to have the latest, very expensive sorting equipment to do so. We then decided to look at what among the two key alternative categories might be attractive options for the county to consider. These two categories are reusables to displace single-use food serviceware products and compostable materials, like the fancy green-tinged bioplastic or the fiber-based materials. Those are a couple examples. And we found that the evidence is very strong for reusables. They are an improvement in pretty much every category. And when it comes to compostables, there are still some advantages, but it's a little bit more of a gray area. And we need to be very careful because not all compostable alternatives are equal.
Fantastic report, by the way, for any of you policy wonks who want to read it. It's online. I'd like to ask Madeline, you are launching this campaign against plastics. Tell us where the campaign is in South Pass. Has South Pass passed an ordinance against certain plastics?
Back in November, we passed the South Pasadena Green Action Plan, which includes 5 goals of sustainability. And the first goal is to work towards making South Pasadena a plastic-free city. We realized that recycling of plastics is no longer a viable option, so we are shifting our focus to reducing them from the start. And this includes decreasing the use and sale of single-use plastics, encouraging reusables, and providing incentives or rewards for those who are actively working towards zero waste.
And how did you launch that? Did you do it by approaching the businesses first, the suppliers first? Did the city take the lead? How did you go? What was your strategy?
To get support from the Chamber of Commerce and businesses, we have been working closely with the Chamber of Commerce to make sure we offer incentives and alternatives, like providing mini grants or loans to businesses who need a jump start on switching to alternatives, or providing an informational tool online that lists the alternatives and options for replacing plastic items and where to obtain them, along with checklists for businesses and restaurants on ways they can reduce their plastic that provide clear steps for the transition. Our business owners want to do what's best for the environment while also being able to keep their customer base. So by assisting them with this process and providing resources, they are willing to make the change.
Was there a difference between a franchise? I don't know how many franchises there are in South Pass. I think there are a few. But was there a difference in a franchise, talking a franchise into changing their sources versus a single business that's owned just by a family or a small group?
To be honest, since this was just passed by council in November, because of COVID-19, we're backed up a little bit. We had our meeting scheduled with the Chamber of Commerce, and then things were getting canceled in February, so it slowed us up a little bit. But as far as I can see, I don't see there being a difference in problems. I think the responsibility falls on the owner, whether the owner themselves, even if it's a franchise, wants to participate. That's solely up to them. But we haven't had any problems so far in approaching businesses. Everyone seems to be really open, and pretty much everyone wants to do right by the environment, I would say.
Amber, tell us about your experience at your school with getting young people activated and concerned about the environment, in particular plastics. And are there a lot of plastics? What school do you go to? You're at?
South Pasadena.
South Pass. Are there a lot of plastics like in the cafeteria and so forth?
A lot of plastics. I think that in the beginning of the school year, maybe like 2018-ish, I think more people were a little bit more interested in the whole climate movement. But now that there's so many things going on with coronavirus, everyone's just shifted everything over. But there are a lot of plastics at my school, namely in the cafeteria, where all the utensils are plastic and all the water bottles are plastic too. And I think that my school is making efforts, but we used to have styrofoam plates that we would carry trays to get our food in. We don't have that anymore. It's all paper. And then they created a campaign, Path Water, where half our water bottles are now aluminum, which I guess is kind of nice too. but I feel like they do a lot of like little things and then they sort of say, okay, that's like enough. That's like all we can do. We've done enough already. And then they sort of like edge away from like more things to do or like doing more. They sort of just like use what they've done in the past as defense for not doing more right now.
So they say, we've done this, check that off the list, we're good. And I have a question, do you still have the plastic forks and spoons in the cafeteria?
Yeah.
Because they're just trash. Nobody even tries to recycle it. Is that correct, Dan?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
correct. If you go and look at the machinery that's used by facilities, they're called material recovery facilities or MRFs, for them to sort through all the different types of materials that people put into the waste stream, they need to do so efficiently just because of the sheer volume that they have to process. And small items like plastic utensils, those will not by and large be recovered.
Daniel, could you bring us up to date on where does it stand on the state legislative front? The SB 1080, tell us what that was, what happened to that, where does it stand now?
So last year, the California State Legislature was considering SB 54/AB 1080. This was called the California Circular Economy Act. And what it would have done, among other things, it would have put forward some fairly ambitious goals for the state to reduce the amount of plastic waste it's generating. Among these, it would have set a goal of a 75% reduction in the number of plastic containers that are generated into the waste stream annually by 2030. It would have directed the manufacturers of those containers to reduce the amount of material they use in making them to the maximum degree possible and require that by law. And it would have given CalRecycle some pretty significant new authorities to regulate the 10 most commonly found plastic litter items, which interestingly to me also includes cigarettes, since cigarette filters, contrary to common knowledge, are actually mostly plastic. About 80% plastic. Unfortunately, that bill, as you said in the beginning, was abandoned after significant pushback. However, I would expect that in the near future, we would see something similar to that reconsidered by the legislature. New York State just banned expanded polystyrene products after they approved their fiscal year 2021 bill earlier this month. So the impetus for state action is there. And the fact that LA County is currently pursuing their own ambitious policy, I think will add fuel to that fire.
And Madeline, you've worked obviously with South Pass. What is the key to getting cities to sign on to reducing plastics? Because LA is the big gorilla that hasn't done it yet.
To be honest, there has to be an interest by the residents because our city has so much interest in the environment, and our council as well has so much interest. I feel like that was the main push that got our Green Action Plan through.
It's also a much smaller town, and you can
imagine
things can happen much more quickly.
Yes, yeah, we are smaller than most other cities, so yeah, that's one thing that we have going for us.
Did the city itself sign on to reducing plastic in its various vendors and uses?
Yes, the city has taken a strong position to lead by example so that all purchases and events will not have single-use plastics. South Pasadena will be updating the city's environmentally preferable purchasing policy to be adopted by all city departments and guide them towards purchasing local and eco-friendly products. We have developed a plastic-free and zero-waste guide for city events and have partnered with one of our local churches to provide reusable dinnerware for these events. We have installed and upgraded new water refill stations at our parks to encourage the use of reusable water bottles as opposed to disposable plastic ones. And we are looking to expand the park and facilities rental agreement to include prohibiting single-use plastics.
Amber, did you get support and help from teachers when you got interested in your environmental causes? Were the teachers helpful, or was there any faculty that was helpful?
Yes, at my school, the former AP Environmental Science teacher helped me out, but he was forced to retire halfway through the school year. So that wasn't very helpful when he was forced to retire, but he was a big help for a lot of it, and he sort of like helped facilitate our club. He was like the only teacher really that was doing the environmental thing. Also, the AP biology teacher was really helpful as well. They like helped me put together stuff.
But you didn't get like support from the principal. It didn't turn into a big school-wide effort. It was really just your effort, a couple teachers, and the students who were interested.
I think I brought up a few things to the principal before. I tried to organize like this little walkout in September for our school in same time as like the national one for kids from South Pass. So I organized a walkout and I told the principal about it. There's just a lot of rules. Like I couldn't really like advertise for the walkout like on school campus because that's not allowed. I couldn't like put any posters up. That's not allowed. Everything had to be done internally, like student to student, like no help from admin really.
Yeah, that's frustrating. Daniel, could you give us an idea of what the next steps are as far as LA County's plastic reduction program? Is there another report that you guys are doing, or is the county got all the information it needs to move forward on this?
The county is currently in the process of drafting the language of their ordinance, and they are using the report that we produced as the primary underlying factual document to inform that. I, not being a member of the county staff, don't have an exact knowledge of what language will make it into the final version of that. I would expect that at the very least, we'll see a ban or restrictions on expanded polystyrene products, as those are the most problematic from both an environmental and human health perspective. But I would hope that they would go further than that and build upon that, perhaps doing some of the more ambitious steps that have been taken by cities like Berkeley of trying to incentivize businesses to adopt reusables for their dine-in customers and phase out disposable single-use products in the food serviceware sector to the maximum degree possible. My team has been working on a second report for them in the context of our master's thesis program, and that report focuses primarily on how we believe they can best do outreach and implementation once that law is passed to help businesses make the transition.
This question is both for Madeline and Daniel. How big an impact would it be if LA County successfully passes a plastic ordinance that will, I guess, both reduce plastic use and I'm not sure exactly what the approach of the ordinance would be. Would it be to reduce plastics from the usage point of view at the very beginning, or will it also deal with recycling?
Well, I think both of those goals work in tandem. When you reduce the use of plastic, you also reduce the amount of waste that is being generated, and you reduce the burden on the recycling apparatus. One thing that in particular that would be helpful, either in this law or in a second round, is to restrict the usage of the most problematic plastics, those being the ones that are not recyclable. Expanded polystyrene is the go-to example for that. An expanded polystyrene ban would both reduce plastic usage and hopefully make recycling easier on the operators because they wouldn't have to deal with this material that is essentially valueless to them.
How big an impact do you think it would have if LA County went forward with a really good, strong anti-plastic ordinance? What kind of impact would that have on other counties, on other cities? And because LA County is big, right? Do you think most of the cities within LA County would go along with it?
That's what we've been trying to do here in our city is we want to lead by example. We're hoping that if we can show that we can get it done here, that, you know, the cities around us will have a base to use to move forward with this. And if it would be wonderful if LA County could adopt these types of ordinances, because I mean, if LA can do it, then everyone else can. It would be really great if we could.
Yeah, if LA County could do that, wouldn't that put tremendous pressure on LA City?
Oh yes,
I mean,
definitely.
That would be pretty phenomenal to have those two large entities take on, you know, the plastics company. But I also keep hearing about the lobbying, and I wonder how strong is it? And how much power does it have on a county level? Any idea?
From my time involved with the County Chief Sustainability Office, I didn't get the impression that they are overtly concerned with preserving the status quo. I think they're very cognizant of the demonstrable problems associated with plastic waste. And again, these are not just environmental in nature. The city of LA and the county of LA and other municipalities in this area spend millions and millions of dollars cleaning up litter that is among which, you know, plastic products, particularly single-use food serviceware products, are disproportionately represented.
I'm going to go to some of these chat comments from Aaron to everyone. Is there an organized anti-plastic group that has a way to rate restaurants that are environmentally friendly? Oh, that's an interesting idea. Anybody ever hear of anything like that?
There are some groups, I'm trying to recall the name. There's a group, I believe it's based in Long Beach or possibly Santa Monica, that certifies restaurants based on their friendliness to the marine environment. And one aspect, when that jurisdiction passed their plastics policy, they incorporated the use of non-plastic alternatives as one of the criteria by which they evaluate restaurants for that certification. I cannot remember exactly which city it is off the top of my head, though.
Another comment. Hi, I'm Robin. We are working on solutions that are unambiguously eco-friendly, no greenwashing. Cheryl and some others may have seen our products, which include takeout containers of various sizes, forks, spoons, condiment containers, and cold cups. Many others are in design and construction at this time. These are all made from palm leaves with 0 chemicals, 0 plastics, which of course means limitation in design and sizes to be able to keep them pure. But they nevertheless have come up with these products that are really super green and no plastic at all. We need help getting the word out from people like you who are active in reducing plastics. So that comes from Robin. Is that right? Aren't there a lot of completely non-plastic alternatives coming out on the market now?
Yes, there is.
Yeah. The thing with compostable alternatives, though, is that the term compostable covers a fairly broad range of products. And the performance of these products in terms of how well they break down and also their environmental impact during the manufacturing process can be a fairly wide range. So it's important to look up exactly how they're made, what the source material is, where they come from, and whether they're actually getting broken down in composting facilities.
And Madeline, did you have some thoughts on that, on the eco-friendly products?
Yes. Well, I just wanted to put in perspective the difference between having something that's compostable or disposable versus reusable. For a 24-seat restaurant, you can divert as much as 150,000 pounds of waste from the landfill by switching out your disposable items with reusable ones and save as much as $23,000 a year. If I was a restaurant, that's a pretty sizable profit and a lot of waste I would be saving. So it's worth it to look into reusables more than disposable products in general. But of course, if you have to, then as Daniel mentioned, you have to be very careful with what compostable is, because it is a broad range.
Yeah, and it also, compostable means it has to occur within a certain situation and for a certain length of time, and composting is not a simple process.
Right.
Yeah.
So compostable is a technical term determined by the Biodegradable Products Institute. That's the national organization that sets the standards for these products. So under these particular conditions, this much water, this temperature, it will break down to this degree in this time period. It's very specific. It doesn't mean that you can throw it in the dirt or on your lawn and it will be gone. It'll still be there for quite a while. The one good thing about compostables, particularly fiber-based or plant-based ones, not bioplastic, is that if they are littered, many of them will eventually break down, though that will typically take longer than it would if they were in the just right environment.
This one is from Michelle Zach. Is there an effort to work with food manufacturers to reduce the amount of plastic in packaging? There is so much extra unneeded plastic. Yogurt and milk used to come in paraffin cardboard packaging, now all thick plastic that never goes away. Who or what group concentrates on this sector? The packaging. I agree. So much is over packaged.
The campaign that I worked on, the Greenpeace Break Free from Plastic campaign, addressed that issue specifically. The idea is that if we talk to the distributors about how we don't want to buy things packaged in all this plastic anymore, then the distributors would go ahead and talk to the manufacturers and say, hey, I can't sell these products. So you're going to have to change the packaging rather than trying to go after the manufacturers themselves, which has been pretty difficult, as proven in the past. And it's worked. Trader Joe's had agreed to reduce their plastic packaging by 1 million pounds a year. And as they move forward, Greenpeace moves forward with their campaign, other stores have given pledges to reduce their plastic packaging in what they sell. I'm sure there's other groups that are also working on this issue, but that's just one example.
Yes, and a comment here echoes what you just said. It says, companies produce what sells. If we all stopped buying or using those materials, they would do something else. But it takes everyone to be committed to not using those products. That's tough because I would many times love to avoid something that's overpackaged in plastic, but I need that thing, that item, that whatever food. It's like, darn it, I wish they sold it in bulk, but they don't, so I'm stuck. So I do kind of feel like consumers don't have all the power. Sometimes a piece of legislation can do an enormous amount that a whole lot, years and years of consumer activism would have taken to do. Good piece of legislation can do overnight. What's your thought on that, Daniel? And also Amber, what are your thoughts on these grassroots movements that seem to take a lot of work? And I wonder in the long run, is that the best place for everybody to put their energies?
Yeah, this is one of those classic collective action problems where every person wants to see a change done, but we need to buy our groceries each week. And so I do think that you're correct in that this is where legislation and the role of our lawmakers and electing people who will pass the laws we want comes into play. I think that is probably the best strategy going forward, but that to show sufficient political support for that, we still need these grassroots efforts and community organizations to continue pushing both our public officials and private businesses to make these changes. And one additional word, I think it's important to stress that replacing plastic disposables in both the food service and grocery store contexts with other types of disposables is really not a very good trade-off. It doesn't improve the situation all that much, if at all. There's some research showing that some plastic alternatives, if they're still getting thrown away, they end up being worse. And so I think returning wherever possible to that milkman style model of the reusable container that you get the product in, you bring it home, you use it, and then when you go to the store the next time, you bring it back and they get to use it over and over again. That has a huge benefit over the lifetime of that product.
Yeah, I remember doing that when I was a kid. You know, my mom would always bring the Coke bottles back or whatever, the milk bottles back, and it was fine. It wasn't a big deal. In this era where germs and disinfecting and cleanliness is even more important than ever, how will that affect the moving toward reusable things when in fact health and sanitary conditions play a big role, and that means more disposable stuff. So how do you think that might affect the efforts to reduce plastic and disposable materials?
Yeah, that's a big issue. I can't bring my thermos to Starbucks right now. I have to get a disposable cup if I go at all. And there are certain other product categories, most notably the medical field, where products have to come in sterilized packaging, where we're going to need, I think, to continue using plastics to some degree for a while. However, what we should be doing is trying to change the way we package those products to use less material and to make sure that they're designed in such a way that that material is as easily recycled as possible.
Great, and this question is for Amber. How did Amber engage other students to speak at environmental and council meetings? Many adults would be afraid to speak, and yet students showed up each month to speak. Did you do some speaking before groups or councils, or?
I spoke at some city meetings. I think the whole activism environment at my school is really interesting, where it's very cool if you go to a city council event. Kids want to go because it's cool to go, at least in my school, among everyone that does youth in government. But then it's not cool to participate in a walkout, really. It's a trade-off.
Well, that's good to know. I'm glad that's cool. I would not have thought so. That is terrific. The Altadena Farmers Market and Alta Paso Green Circle are great advocates inspiring our community. They're grassroots community leaders. Yes, farmers markets have a big part to play in this, because that's actually a place where you can avoid a lot of packaging, even though there's a lot of plastic bags, but there's still overall a lot less packaging. Is that right?
That is correct. One of the things that you can do to help solve this growing problem is to shop locally. So going to your local farmers market, you can, and buying directly from the farmers, can find, I don't find any vegetables or fruits wrapped in plastic there. That's definitely one way you can avoid buying things in plastic.
Dan, this is a can it be recycled question. Number one, people should know that soft plastic bags, small or large, do not go into the recycling. Is that right?
I think that's a safe bet. So we got some mixed feedback from the various operators that we spoke with in the course of our reporting on the value of plastic film, but by and large, most facilities are not able to recover it. The problem with those sorts of products is that when you actually boil it down, it's just such a small amount of material. There's not very much money in it. And that also gets to one of the other problems with other small items like plastic utensils. Every time an item is recovered, that is a cost to the facility to recover it, to have a worker or an automated machine pull it out. And if the value they're getting from that is not very much, then they start losing money.
Now, we have a comment from Stacy Whitney. How do we effectively manage concerns with food safety while concurrently addressing our need to reduce single-use plastics? I manage the Altadena Farmers Market, where local organization Altapasa Green Circle worked to create a new model for farmers markets, reducing our dependency on single-use plastics. However, with our new current climate and new normal, we have to be even more conscientious about food safety, sanitizing and disinfecting shared surfaces, including food surfaces, and managing how many hands touch a product. Prior to the virus, we worked very diligently on becoming a zero-waste farmers market, and most of our vendors were completely on board with these efforts. But available non-plastic single-use utensils are much more expensive, and from a food safety perspective, reusables might now be of concern.
This was a problem before that we had faced before any problems with the coronavirus. When we had talked about implementing AB 619, which is the bring your own container law, into the farmers market setting, it's still up to the health departments to decide, whether or not that can happen. And we were in conversations with the LA County Public Health Department about that before all this happened. Of course, it's been delayed now. These were all concerns long before the coronavirus, because food safety is a huge, huge issue that we've always, had to deal with. So I do understand that people think that it's going to be more of an issue, but it was so much of an issue before. I can't see how it can be more than it was, to be honest.
Amber, what do you hope to accomplish in terms of the environmental issues at your school? Do you have any other goals on the horizon you want to attack? Or you want to
My goal
try to solve?
Is to get rid of the plastic utensils in my cafeteria.
And that means substituting reusable metal ones, right? Or
people have metal utensils at home. Like, can't they just bring that or something?
Maybe these guys can help you do a little research and come up with the best alternative, because they've had a lot of experience with that. Daniel, what's the next steps for you and the Luskin School in LA County?
This ordinance that the County Sustainability Office is working on hopefully will be just the first step on their path to a more sustainable future. My team, in our forthcoming report that we are preparing on implementation, we outline some potential more long-term steps that they can take over the next few years to spur regional collaboration around reusables and getting businesses on board, and also creating better disposal options for compostable alternatives should the need arise to continue using them. As to my own involvement in that, it is up in the air a little bit right now. I'm graduating in 2 months and into the second Great Depression, apparently. So we will see what the future holds.
Great. This question, can Amber and Madeline provide more details about their store outreach programs last summer? What stores did they visit? What did they say to the managers? How many students participated? And also my question is, were the managers and people open to talking to you face to face, or did they say, I'm too busy, go away?
I think we had a decent amount of kids. A lot of repeating faces, but I think that the kid bait works. I don't know. I feel like people are more open to talking to kids most of the time. But they're like, oh my God, it's a kid. Okay.
Did you just knock on doors, or did you call and make an appointment, or how did you approach the businesses?
We just went inside and then we were like, can we talk to your manager? And then we had like these posters, the ban single-use plastic posters. And then we just like talked about it to the managers and then told them that to consider this, talk to like your higher ups. And so like our goal is that it keeps going higher up until it reaches like the big guys, the big boys, and then they have to like do something.
Madeline, did you just knock on doors, or did you call, make an appointment, or how did you approach them?
As Amber said, we visited a lot of stores all over San Gabriel Valley. You'd ask to speak to the manager, and then you would, talk about how the problems that we face with single-use plastics, or that all this plastic packaging, how we just don't want to buy it anymore. And we had a letter and said, here's this letter. Can you please give this to your manager? And it listed all of the reasons why we as consumers don't want to buy things that have all this plastic packaging material that's completely unnecessary. Some of the managers were, very on board, very nice and accepting. And some other ones, some more surprising ones, like, for example, Whole Foods would refuse to even touch our letter. They didn't want to talk with us about it. They said we can refer to an email. They were very adamant to not have anything to do with us. And I thought that was really strange considering they're a health food store. So it was a very interesting experience to learn, which stores were consistently seemed to be on board and which ones just weren't.
That is surprising considering Whole Foods is supposed to be so.
It was
But
quite shocking, to be honest.
Owned by Amazon and Jeff Bezos now, so maybe you could just send that letter directly to Jeff Bezos.
Yeah, there you go.
He's the one. He's the Whole Foods guy these days.
Mm-hmm.
I have to ask this one question though about something very particular. These, they call them sachet bags. They're basically plastic bags that have the zipper built in. That you press. It's like Ziploc bags. Are those completely unrecyclable? They're just got to put them in the trash?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, given the amount of plastic that's in any individual bag, that will most likely not make its way into the recovery bin at a MRF. It's too lightweight and too small. Also, those sorts of items, even when you're done with them, they tend to have some bits of food and residue on the inside. And that's something we haven't really talked about yet this evening, is the issue of contamination. And that's a huge hurdle to recycling. It doesn't matter even if the product is one of these code 1 or code 2 products. If it goes in the recycling and it's covered in grease or food residue or something like that, sometimes the equipment itself can't even recognize that it's plastic and separate it, particularly optical scanners. They see grease instead of plastic. And then secondly, even if it does make its way through, it degrades the overall quality of the recyclable material at the end. And so that's why even if a place that you go to get takeout food uses, say, a code 1 PET clamshell container, that's still not better because it still won't get recycled unless you are scrubbing it out before you put it in the recycling.
I see. Wow. I know, so frustrating because there are just so many obstacles, economic and physical obstacles to effective recycling. Danny, is this really a very localized legislative issue? It's not something that can really be managed nationally? So maybe writing to Congress and the Senate, U.S. Congress, and that wouldn't do much good. It really is a local
question. It's not out of the question that national action could happen at some point in the future. I think the next step will be getting California state to join the several other states, including New York and Connecticut and Maine, that have passed their own statewide policies. But once things hit a sufficient threshold, we could see some national strategy. The issue is that the United States is a very large and diverse country. And while it is good to set national goals, sometimes it creates difficulties if you prescribe one course of action that every jurisdiction has to do. So we may see something more akin to what the European Union did, where they set union-wide standards for how much to reduce plastic waste, but then they left it to the individual nation members on how best to do that.
This is from Cheryl to everyone. So can Amber talk about the students' PSA against Target's plastic wrapping?
It's kind of along the same lines of the whole like going to stores thing, where like you tell them as a consumer you don't want to have like buy all these overpackaged goods, and instead of going to the store we just put it in PSA. That's what it is.
Anita says there is national action, and it seems to do with Udall, Lowenthal, Merkley, landmark legislation to break free from plastic pollution.
Yeah, so this is a good thing to see that these bills are being introduced. I think we should be cognizant, though, that we've also had bills introduced for years on end now, introducing a carbon tax. So it does show that the issue is gaining increased salience, but as depressing as it may be, we sometimes need to temper expectations and do what we can at a state or regional level to create positive change and show the popular support to spur eventual national action.
Have there been any studies that show whether it costs more or less to use less plastic?
Oh, definitely. As I mentioned earlier, the restaurant example I gave was a restaurant from Sunnyvale, California, that, like I said, it was a 24-seat restaurant, and they diverted as much as 150,000 pounds of waste from the landfill by switching out their disposable items with reusable ones, and saved $23,000 for themselves that year. So there's a huge cost incentive to get rid of the disposable plastic plates and forks and cups and all of that, and switch to reusables. Definitely.
Where is the next battlefront going to be? State, local, or corporate? Well, I mean, just your thoughts on kind of the big picture there. Daniel?
I think there's two key areas that we should look at for near future action. One is California state. We have 1/7 of the country's population, and while SB 54 didn't get passed last year, I don't think it's unrealistic to see a bill of that caliber passed within the next few sessions. And that will be huge. It will really have a profound impact and set a model for many other states to follow in. Secondly, I think we need to examine the cultural issue around the use of disposables. The thing that gets people to shift away from throwaway products, you can use economic incentives, you can have the 10-cent surcharge on the bag, but something that's much more effective, in my opinion, although it's hard to quantify, is the embarrassment and the public shame element. We need to make it culturally normal to bring your own to-go container, to bring your own thermos or cup to the restaurant, to the coffee shop, to the grocery store, so that the change in behavior happens on the consumer side, and people who do not do that behavior, who don't prioritize reducing plastic waste, feel uncomfortable and change to adapt.
Any thoughts from you, Madeline or Amber, on the big picture going forward, what you'd like to see? Amber, what would you like to see in the future? Do you think by then Americans will have changed their ways and thoughts and patterns?
Probably not, honestly, which is disappointing.
So you're not optimistic.
No.
How about you, Madeline?
I think if we just keep addressing the problem and educating the public, then we can keep moving forward, and hopefully things will change. And I completely agree with what Daniel mentioned, that it starts with a behavioral change, and working grassroots is definitely where to start in your own communities. There's so many different things you can do to address this growing problem. You can talk to your city council, vote for leaders who will take these issues seriously, become active in your communities to bring about awareness, make smart purchases, which include buying things that don't have packaging. There's buying in bulk. I know that's going to be an issue with, because of COVID-19 with the scoops, but I know the other stores that have the dispensaries,
you just pull down the lever.
Still keeping that, exactly. So yeah. There's ways to keep our bulk. There's also the 3 big R's: reduce, reuse, and repair.
That's great. I do have a couple comments here that the two recycling bills, AB 1080 and SB 54, they're 2-year bills, and there's still a priority for the author Ben Allen, who is trying to get them passed in 2020, this coming year, or now, which is the second year of a 2-year session. So there's a big coalition working on this bill, and apparently they're not dead yet because it straddles, they're still alive in their second year. Is that right, Daniel? So there's still hope for that bill.
Yes, I think there still is hope for that bill. And yeah, during the current session that we're in, I would expect Ben Allen to continue to push for that bill because a lot of work went into it. And as far as I know, although I don't know him personally, I know him through people, among them Kevin De Leon. And from what I hear, the gentleman is very passionate about getting that bill passed.
And Bill Allen is from where?
Ben Allen is from, it's just a little bit north of here, I believe.
Oh, but it's Southern California?
District 26, part of Los Angeles County.
Oh, excellent. Good. Oh, good. So he's a local person. Any other final thoughts? And if not, I will turn this back to Sharon and to Greg Apodapica. Final thoughts from everybody on our panel. Go ahead, Madeline.
I just wanted to point out that according to municipal waste hauling diversion summaries, about 31% is comprised of plastics. With the recycling market all but gone, that translates to roughly 153,000 pounds of plastics ending up in the landfill every 3 months. That's 51,000 pounds a month, or 2 pounds of plastic per person per month. The numbers are staggering, and as communities and individuals, we really need to do everything we can to make sure this no longer continues.
Amber, any final thoughts on what your plans are or hopes for the future? Advice to other young people who might be interested in environmental issues?
Just do it, I guess. Final thoughts. I really hope that I don't have to die early.
People here are doing everything you can to give young people the longest life possible in a very healthy world. So yeah, we're all trying. Daniel?
I think I would just stress that as with many of the challenges that we face in this trying time, this problem is big and it is complicated and it requires an all of the above approach. It needs both individual action, community action, and action in our legislative houses. And so do your research, vote for people who reflect your values and your priorities, but also make those small individual choices that can help reduce your own personal impact.
Thank you all so much. You've been terrific. And this is our first Zoom forum. So it's been a little interesting experiment for all of us. But you guys have been terrific and appreciate your time and your thoughts. And I can't stress to people how informative and interesting the UCLA Less Than School report is. So it's available online. And the name of it again, Daniel, is what?
The name of the report is Plastic Waste in LA County, and it is available at the Luskin Center for Innovation website.
Great. And I'm going to turn this back now to Sharon.
Thank you, Val. Yeah,
Thank you.
We're going to pass it off to Greg now, and he's going to wrap it up. On to Greg Apodapica, head of Community 2.0.
I really want to thank everybody, the organizers, Altadena Heritage, Altadena Town Council, Ban Single-Use Plastics, and then my own organization, Community 2.0. It's been great to watch this unfold over the course of the last few months. You might know that we had planned to do this as a live event last month, and then at the last minute we had to cancel, as everybody had to cancel their program. So I'm happy to see we had about 76 participants tonight. Very happy with that number. Thanks also to Val and our panelists, Amber, Dan, and Madeline. We had 17 co-sponsors for this event. I think that is a great omen to show what we can do when we get together and work together, including 4 people on our tech team. This was a success because we had 4 people behind the scenes, keeping dog voices out of the background and all that goes on here when you do live events like this. So to summarize, we're moving forward. Tonight is the start of a campaign, an ongoing campaign. It's not the end of anything. We need you to join us. It's on us. I think Amber said it as good as anybody. I don't want to die in 10 years. The stakes couldn't be higher if we don't change our behaviors and start living more sustainably, and also electing officials that are going to think green and act green and pass legislation that's green. But the bottom line is that this is not, and it's said all the time, we can't recycle our way out of this. Recycling is not the answer. We need to do recycling, but we need to get on the manufacturers and tell them, hey, quit manufacturing this stuff that's not recyclable. and do your part to help us clean up the world. The silver lining in the COVID-19 emergency is that we've seen that we can dramatically change our lifestyles. I mean, nobody's driving anymore. There's no more smog in LA. Wow, it's just a huge indicator of what we can do when we set our minds to it. So we need your help. We'll be reaching out after this to our 17 co-sponsors of this event to form a coalition. We'll be asking them to reach out to their members to sign petitions that we can give to our Catherine Barger, Supervisor Barger, and the mayor and city council in Pasadena, where we're going to focus our efforts. And we need them to sign petitions to pass the legislation that's pending right now in these areas. In addition, since we can't walk doors, we need the city and we need the county to support us with paper and online media campaigns, right? We need them to reach out. They have everybody's address and everybody's cell and email address. We need them to reach out and tell them how important this is, and then tell them that we'll be following up on the phone and with emails to offer people support if they want to adopt alternatives to single-use plastics. Somebody said during the conversation tonight that we have to hit them where they live, which is in finances. And so we discussed earlier today that our approach is going to be cost savings. We absolutely want to support our local businesses and offer them ways to work more effectively and save money instead of shifting to alternatives that are going to cost more money. And this isn't something that is new to us. We've seen documented cases in the city of Portland and other places where using alternatives to single-use plastics actually saves small business money. So we're looking to, with the help of Dan at UCLA, we're looking forward to reaching out to Berkeley and Santa Monica and other towns that have already done successful campaigns and learn from them and replicate their best practices. The benefits are many. Obviously, reduced waste if we can reduce single-use plastics, but also improved health. You might know, I'm sure that you do know, that plastics come from fossil fuels. So the fewer plastics that we use, the less fossil fuels we need to burn or extract from the ground, and therefore less greenhouse gas in the environment. Everybody wins. And just to reiterate what Amber said, this is a life and death issue. Let's not make a mistake about that. We need your support. On the Eventbrite, a notice that you got is my email. If you want to write my phone number down, I'll be glad to take your calls to volunteer to help us continue this program and to continue this campaign. So my phone number is area code 626-437-6735. So what's coming up next, not tonight, but in the near future, is we'll reach out to the supervisor, county supervisor, and to the Pasadena City Council and mayor to get their support. And then we'll reach out to our co-sponsors to form the coalition I discussed earlier. We'll be reaching out to you folks who have tuned in tonight to ask you to engage with us further and give you a more specific next steps. So more than anything, we need you to sign on with us. We can't do this on our own, even with 17 co-sponsor agencies. We need everybody to change their lifestyles. And so we'll be here to support you to do that too. So thanks very much again to everybody. I'm going to sign off. We'll see you probably in about 2 months with another event like this on a similar topic. Thanks. Sharon, would you like to say anything at the end, Sharon?
I just want to say thank you to everybody who made this event happen, and thank you to everybody who joined.